Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. Look, I'm going to just tell you right now, I have not been to bed. Not a word of a lie. I haven't slept 1 minute. Midnight came, Punisher hit Netflix. I stayed up, watched 6 episodes of Punisher, came in here, started getting ready for the show. Yay! I might start speaking in Portuguese. Seriously, at some point in this program, I just might start speaking Portuguese. I've never spoken Portuguese, but the way my brain is wired right now, that just might happen. Anyway, guys, it's great to have you here today on this glorious Friday. I was kind of hoping that Punisher would hit online on the West Coast earlier, like 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, midnight Eastern. Maybe I'd be able to get through the whole series and do my review today. I am going to put up my review for Punisher today. But I've got like 5 more episodes or 6 more episodes I got to get through. So that's going to come later in the afternoon probably and stuff like that. I'm already delirious. I mean, I am not thinking straight at all, which may not be any different than any other time of the day. But yeah, I'm not 1 minute asleep. It's going to be an interesting kind of show. All right, guys, here's how today's show is going to go. I've got 5 topics picked out from topics and questions that you guys have sent in to me. How do you get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show? It's simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john@thejohncampeashow.com. Send on in your question. Guys, this is important. Make sure you put that word topic in the subject line. Put the word topic in the subject line or else I'm not going to see it. And also make sure you keep your email to 90 words or less or else I'm not even going to bother reading it because I wouldn't even be able to fit it on the screen even if I wanted to. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get to the first topic today. And the first topic today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Dave. And Dave writes, "My wife and I were having a debate on who is the best actor of our generation. She thinks it's Tom Hanks. I say it's Daniel Day-Lewis. Her argument is that Day-Lewis is the best actor that is the best actor to be in no one's favorite movie and will not be remembered by the masses as fondly as Hanks. That got me thinking. Should Daniel Day-Lewis have mixed it up a little bit more genre-wise to truly be considered the greatest?" All right, well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And it's an interesting point your wife raises. I mean, look, when you're talking about Daniel Day-Lewis and Tom Hanks, you are without dispute. I mean, there's no questions about this. You are talking about 2 of the greatest of our era. Absolutely no doubts. Now, you can make an argument that some other names may belong up there, whether it's like a Denzel Washington or to me, a Russell Crowe. I think he's tragically underrated, and some other performers as well. I'm sure there's a bunch of others you could put up there, but without dispute, no one's going to argue. If you want to put in those conversation, Daniel Day-Lewis and Tom Hanks, no one's going to argue with you about that. Of course, those 2 names belong in the discussion. Now, to me, it is fairly clear that Daniel Day-Lewis is the greatest actor probably of all time. I just think that goes, look, when he appears in a movie, it's just kind of a foregone conclusion that he'll at minimum get a Best Actor nomination. Like kind of at minimum, that's just the way it is with Daniel Day-Lewis. And he's got, he's got 3 Best Actor Academy Awards on his mantle. Is it 3? I think it's 3. That means no actor, male actor in history, I believe, has more than him for Best Lead, in the Best Lead Actor category. Tom Hanks, he's a back-to-back Oscar winner. He's a multi-Oscar winner too. And I think one of the very few people in history to actually win the award for Best Lead Actor back-to-back. I think it's happened 1 or 2 other times, but at any rate, it's happened, but it's very rare. And it hasn't happened since Tom Hanks did it. Your wife does raise a really good point, though, about how, look, who's probably going to be remembered more? It'll probably be Tom Hanks because of what she's pointing out. Like, Hanks just appears in a lot of the more popular movies, a lot of the more memorable movies. Well, it's not like There Will Be Blood isn't memorable, but a lot of the more popular movies Tom Hanks has appeared in, right? So that is a good point to raise. It's an interesting point to raise. But to me, that's still a different question. We're not asking the question, who's going to be the most popular actor of all time? That's not the question. Who's the most popular actor of our era? That's not the question. The question is, if the way you're putting it is, who is the best actor of our era? To me, the only question is Daniel Day-Lewis the greatest of all time? That's the only question I think that's actually up for debate. In my opinion, you may have a different opinion, that's totally fine. But to me, it's not even a question. Who's the greatest actor of our era? It's Daniel Day-Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis is the greatest actor of our era. It could be arguable about, maybe you could say somebody else is the greatest actor of all time. I've come to believe he is the best actor the planet has ever seen. I think he's the greatest actor of all time. But that can be debated, whatever. So that's just the way I see it. I see him as two separate questions. Most popular actor, most beloved actor, all that kind of stuff. Best actor. Best actor. So those are two different things. You know, I was a musician for a lot of years. You know, there are two different questions about who's the most popular guitar player, who's the most successful guitar player, but who's the best guitar player? You know, those are two radically different questions, because it could be like amongst the guitar community that it's well known amongst everybody in the guitar community is this one guitarist who might be a session guitarist, doesn't play in a popular band, whatever. They are clearly the best guitarist. Just because you may not know their name, though, doesn't mean anything. So that's kind of the way I see it. What do you guys think about that? Jump down to the comments section and let me know your thoughts. All right, let's move on to the next question. I mean, with Justice League out right now, there's a lot of questions going on about CGI and things like that. So this question is kind of timely. It also comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Kevin, who writes, I went into Justice League tonight with very low expectations and came out having really enjoyed it. It was a blast. I doubted your faith that it would be good, but you were right. Unfortunately, the CGI was very bad. My question, have the number of films requiring CGI strained the industry's ability to meet demand? Have any of the studios been able to corral the best talent? Thanks, and go filthy. Well, I mean, you're right. Today's movies, more and more, are being called upon for visual effects. Visual effects are used more than any other time in history. I remember when, I can't remember which movie it was. It might have been, was it Titanic? Titanic might have been, at the time, the movie with the most visual effects shots required. And now it's like laughable. Now the number of VFX shots in Titanic is laughable compared to today's movie. So not only do the heavy visual effects movies of today require more visual effects shots than the visual effects heavy movies of yesteryear, but there are more movies that come out now that require big visual effects shots and require all that kind of stuff. So there is a big demand, but there's more and more talent becoming available. You know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, you know, if you were a visual effects studio, I remember when I worked in visual effects and we needed to hire help, it was tough. It was difficult finding good visual effects people to come work for us because like nobody had grown up doing visual effects. Visual effects and computer CGI was still young enough that there weren't a whole bunch of 23-year-olds out there who have been doing CGI since they were 14. I mean, that didn't exist at the time. So it was hard. But today, you do have like kids coming out of high school who've been doing, been playing around with the various visual effects software since they were a child. Right? So you have a lot more people who have gone into that field, who have decided they want to pursue it. Usually they want to pursue it because of video game development, but you have a lot more people. So there's a bigger talent pool. So that's the demand. And we're seeing that in a lot of movies, like a lot of the big visual effects movies today. Oops, sorry about that, guys. A lot of the big visual effects movies today are some of the best visual effects we've ever seen. They're simply some of the best visual effects we've ever seen. So the standard has not dropped. It's just that when you come across a movie like Justice League, and I talked about this on the show yesterday for a moment, Justice League is a very unique situation. And it bears repeating today because I believe this is an important thing that everybody really needs to drive home. Justice League is a unique situation. Justice League is a situation where you had two directors. One director had to walk away 6 months before the movie ever came out, so he was never able to finish what it was he wanted to do. And then a new director in Joss Whedon came in with only 6 months, and he did a ton of reshoots and reorganizing of the movie, and they just flat out didn't have the time. They had 6 months to do it. Not the 2 years that you'd like to have, 6 months to shoot it, do post, all that kind of stuff, and they just simply ran out of time. And that's why I mentioned 2 months ago that there were discussions at Warner Brothers about should we push Justice League into 2018. And I understand why they didn't. I do. I do understand why they didn't. If I was in charge at Warner Brothers, and thank God I'm not because I would run that company into the ground. But if I were in charge at Warner Brothers, I would have definitely moved Justice League and given them like that 2 extra months, maybe 2.5 extra months for them to really get it to where it needed to be, understanding that, Whedon came in, whole bunch of reshooting, rearranging the movie, retooling the film, all new visual effect shots, all that kind of stuff, and they only had 6 months. That was, I think, unrealistic, and I think that plays itself out. One of the things that really gets me, because I saw Justice League for the 3rd time last night. Yes, I've gone to see it 3 times now. But and Anne was Anne's first time seeing it. Anne really liked it too. But one of the biggest problems with the movie is Steppenwolf, as far as the CGI goes. And you know what? Here's a great example. You see this guy here? I actually like this movie, the BFG. Although I kept wondering, so where's the gun from Doom? Like, where's the gun? Anyway, the movie's called the BFG, Big Friendly Giant. And when you watch that movie and watch the visual effects of this guy's face, like when he talks and it looks like a human talking. Like when I talk, it's not just my mouth moves and nothing else moves. And my mouth does this. And no, when I talk, the cheeks move, the forehead moves, the eyelids move, everything moves when I talk. When you watch Justice League again, watch Steppenwolf. And I think one of the big problems with Steppenwolf is the model is good. The model on Steppenwolf is good. It's a good looking model if you're just looking at a still shot. But then he talks, "Oh, mother, now it is time for the unity." When nothing else moves, just the jaw goes up and down, a little bit of lip movement and everything else. And that's what really made it feel like a video game cutscene. Like that's what really made it feel like a video game cutscene to me. And I can't help but feel that, you know what? I bet if they had more time, and that was probably one of the things they probably had no choice and went like, well, you know what? We got to cut corners somewhere. You know what takes a lot of time? Face rigging. Okay. Let's just move Steppenwolf from here down and not worry about the upper lip up on it when he's talking. That's what it felt like to me. So no, there is a bigger strain on CGI companies today than ever. Absolutely. But there's also bigger talent pools and there's more work to be put out. And I think we see that the results in the movies that we see, the visual effects companies today do better work than they've ever done in history. Just that Justice League is a very unique situation that faced some very unique challenges. That unfortunately, one of the repercussions of that is the VFX didn't turn out, the way it could have. And so that's just the way we got to look at it. All right. Thanks a lot for the question, man. Let's move on now to the next one. And the next one, also a CG one, I believe. Jenson Vettickanakudy. I'm not even going to try to say that last name again, dude. Hello, John. Greetings from the Bronx. We all know how you feel about 3D glasses and how it makes the beautiful color cinematography all dulled. So it had me thinking, can the very same be said by CGI motion capture? An actor giving a strong, heartfelt, powerful performance with emotions only to be covered in motion sensors, reflective markers, and masked in CGI. Well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And you know what, Jensen? I can totally see where you're coming from with that. Because on the one hand, yeah, I mean, I've said this 1,000 times. I hate going into a movie theater and having to put the first thing you got to do. These movie makers, directors, and cinematographers spent 2 years making this motion picture with these vivid colors and the exact contrast they wanted and blah, blah, blah. And what's the first thing you do when you go into the theater? Put tinted film over our eyes. Yeah, that's a great idea. Anyway, I hate that about 3D movies. Anyway, so it's an interesting comparison you're making. Like, isn't that kind of then what the same thing that's happening when an actor comes in to do motion capture work? I mean, they're giving this great performance like an Andy Serkis, and you're covering it up with a digital thing. I see where you're coming from, but what I would challenge you on that is this. What's the alternative? Like, when Andy Serkis is playing Caesar in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, is it just supposed to be him in a gorilla suit with no mask on so you can see his face? Like, is that what you're supposed to do? I mean, really, what is the alternative? Like, you cannot get him in practical makeup really looking the way they wanted Snoke to look in, not The Last Jedi. Well, he's going to be Snoke in The Last Jedi, but Force Awakens. But, so you got to do it. You're not going to do Gollum with him just in a rubber suit and then no mask on his face. I mean, you're not going to do that. So really, when it comes to these motion graphics or motion capture characters, honestly, what's the alternative? Like, what else can they do? So, and you know what? More and more, we're finding out, I heard Andy Serkis talk about this the other day, more and more, as more and more motion capture is being done, you're getting visual effects people now who specialize in motion capture. You're getting actors now who specialize in motion capture performance, and you're getting a closer synergy between the motion capture artists and the motion capture performers and the way they meld their stuff together, and they're perfecting that art more and more and more, that some people could argue that there's some interesting different potential you have with a motion capture performance that you wouldn't have otherwise were it not for the ability to go into digital later and work with the performance that the performer gives and accentuate that with exactly what the director wants. And the potential, the possibilities there are absolutely endless. I know I'm tripping over my words a lot. Let me repeat, I have not gone to bed. I have been up since yesterday. I stayed up all night watching Punisher, and I'm getting a little bit delirious. I can't even remember what we were talking about. What show is this? So I think you're seeing that happen more and more. So I totally see where you're coming from. I get the question. It's just that the big problem that then comes back into our face is, what's the alternative? There isn't really any alternative. All right, I got 2 more questions to go, and then I'm going to go to your live questions, guys. And the next question comes to us from Marco from Milan, Italy. And Marco from Milan, Italy writes, my question is, I know that the term domestic box office refers to the combined box office of the United States and Canada. But why? Why aren't there distinct numbers and charts for these 2 nations? Well, grazie, Marco. Grazie per la donna. Grazie per la domanda. It's really basically what it comes down to is this. The reason that they don't separate those 2 out, and when you're talking about the domestic box office actually includes Canada and the US. And you know what? I looked up the other day if it also included Mexico. I don't think it does. But one of the reasons they do it that way is because of this. It's Canada and the US without fail. Without fail. Their release dates are always the same. You might find a 0.01% of the time that that's not the case. But for the most part, when the movie opens on June 21st in the United States, it's opening on June 21st in Canada. So it's always the same. It's always completely in sync. You cannot say the same about the rest of the world, right? So like the reason I explained this in a video I did once, the reason why when we talk about opening weekend box office numbers, the reason we only talk about domestic numbers when talking about opening weekend box office is because each movie opens in a different number of countries on its opening day. So you can't really compare. Like, what's the point in comparing, I don't know, let me make up, what's the point in comparing Fast and the Furious 8 that opened in 13 countries on its opening weekend? What's the point of comparing that with Jumanji that may be opening in 35 countries on the same weekend? It would be pointless to try to compare the numbers saying, oh, Jumanji had a bigger opening weekend. Yeah, but Jumanji opened in like 20 other countries on the same day, whereas Fast and the Furious 8 spread its release internationally over a wider period of time. But with the domestic box office, it's always the same, right? It's Canada and the US. There it is. That's the domestic box office. Now you're comparing apples to apples. So that's why when I talk about box office numbers, when we're talking about totals, I usually talk in worldwide terms. So, we talk about movies that join the $1 billion club. Usually when we're talking about final numbers of a movie and how much money a movie makes overall, I usually talk in worldwide numbers. But whenever we're talking about opening weekend, I always speak in terms of domestic because that's the only way to compare apples to apples. Otherwise, it's an absolutely useless comparison. For instance, there is a report going around right now that Justice League poised to have a $325 million opening weekend, right? And it's like, what? That's record. It's 325 million worldwide because Justice League is doing the very rare thing of opening like on the same day in basically every international market, including China. And that's rare. That's rare that they open in the US and China on the same day. But Justice League is doing that. So since it's doing that and having this huge worldwide release, practically all in sync, it's going to get this big opening weekend number. But don't be fooled by that. That's the worldwide number. The domestic number for its opening weekend box office, we thought was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, oh, and I forgot to bring up, yeah, there's the sidebar for this one, just because we're talking about Canada box office. So domestically for its opening weekend, I originally predicted it'd be 135. It looks like right now they're saying it's probably trending to 110 to 115, which, I mean, that wouldn't be good. That's not good. I mean, it's good for almost every movie. Like $110 million opening weekend for a movie. That's fantastic for almost every movie. But like, this is Justice League. It was a $300 million film. When you take all the reshoots into account, on top of that, like Batman versus Superman made $166 million opening weekend. You don't want Justice League taking over a $50 million nosedive on that. That's not good. I mean, you don't want to make less opening weekend than, say, Thor Ragnarok. I mean, just in theory, you know, just in principle, you don't want to do that. So I hope that the projections are wrong. I hope it does better than that because, like I said, Justice League is a movie I enjoy. So I just want to see it do well. All right. Let's move on now to the next question. This will be the final email question, and then I'm going to go to you guys and take your live questions for those of you guys who are watching live. And the next question comes to us from Garrett Green, who writes, "Hey, John, big fan of the show and watch your videos every day." Well, thank you so much, Garrett. "The next DCEU film, Aquaman, isn't slated to release until December 21st, 2018. That's 13 months after the release of Justice League. Do you think this huge gap, will this have an impact on Aquaman? Will this over a year-long gap between movies cause a decline in interest in the DCEU?" And you know what? It's funny. I totally forgot. Like, I knew, we all know that the next movie coming up for the DCEU is Aquaman. We all know that. But I keep forgetting that it doesn't open until December 21st. You're right. That is over a year in between movies. Let's put this in perspective. All right. So Justice League is now open in theaters. By the time the next DCEU movie comes out, Marvel will have put out not one, not two, but 3 MCU movies between now and when the next Justice League or the next DCEU movie comes out. Before Aquaman comes out, 3 MCU movies are coming out. 3 Fox movies are coming out with New Mutants, X-Men, Phoenix, and Deadpool 2. You got 3 coming out from Fox. All that, and then you've got 1 or 2 from Sony as well. So now you've got like 6, 7, or 8 other comic book movies that are coming out before we ever get our next DCEU movie. That's bad, right? Well, yes and no. On the one hand, will this hurt Aquaman? Probably a little bit. I mean, there's something to be said for momentum, right? There's something to be said for doing Justice League, and then like 5 months after Justice League, when there's still a little bit of momentum there from Justice League, hit it with Aquaman. Now it's going to be over a year between Justice League, which isn't being received with, you know, raving reviews as it is, going off, and then Aquaman coming, which in his first debut standalone film, without any momentum. That hurts. But at the same time, keep in mind this. After Batman versus Superman, we all talked about it. Warner Brothers, I believe very wisely, decided to put on the brakes. Take a step back. They pulled some of the projects off the calendar, moved some things around, and they've been very public about saying, look, we are going to take a deep breath and see where we're at. And they didn't put anything else into production other than Aquaman. And they said, look, we need to reevaluate where we are. The audience has spoken to us after we put out Batman vs. Superman. I like Batman vs. Superman, but there's a lot of people that didn't. So Warner Brothers went, the audience has spoken to us. We need to take a step back and take a breath. And I believe this year-long gap is a part of that breath. Now, this does raise the question. What's next for Warner Brothers and DC? What is next? Because despite my apparently completely wrong predictions of a 70% critic rating for Justice League, despite my completely wrong prediction for apparently wrong, maybe it won't be wrong, maybe we'll get lucky and it won't be wrong, but my prediction of 135 million opening for Justice League at the box office, it looks like it's going to come in under that. Despite the fact that I predicted that I believe Justice League is going to be the first DCEU movie to break the $1 billion club, looks like I'm going to be wrong about that too. So understanding all that and looking at the critic rating right now is at 37%. So just a hair under 4 out of every 10 critics like it. A hair over 6 out of every 10 critics don't like it. That's not the response they wanted to see. I've seen a good number of fans online speaking very mixed about it. I've already gone to see it 3 times, so you know what I think about it. But even when I watched Justice League, you saw my first review. It's like, oh, you know what? This movie is not going to work for everybody. It's like, I can see the flaws. And I know that, okay, because of this flaw and this flaw and this flaw, it's not going to work for everybody, but it does work for me because the good stuff outweighed the bad stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I was cognizant of the fact that, oh, this movie isn't going to be for everybody. Not everybody's going to share my enthusiasm for this movie. You could just tell. So this really raises the question now. With Justice League not getting the critic response they were hoping for, with Justice League not getting the box office response that it was hoping for, at least not in its opening weekend, it's not going to come in. Like I said, Batman vs. Superman made 166 million. How can you go from 166 million to 110 million or 120 even? So they didn't get the critic response they want. They're not getting the overwhelming fans response that they were hoping for, and they're not going to make the money on it that they were hoping for. So combine that with the year-long break that they're on, we have to ask the question, what's next? What does DC do from here? Clearly, they need to retool, but then it's tricky because they've got Wonder Woman. Right now, Wonder Woman is a successful franchise, right? So you want to retool the universe, but you can't retool it too much because Wonder Woman's working. You don't want to ditch that. You know, Patty Jenkins is on a roll with that franchise right now, so you don't want to get in the way of that. But it makes you rethink about what are we doing with Justice League 2? What are we doing with, you know, that Suicide Squad 2? What are we going to do about that Gotham City Sirens? What are we going to do about that Batgirl movie we've been talking about? What are we going to do with a Cyborg standalone movie? What are we going to do with, you know, a possible Green Lantern relaunch? What are we going to do about all that if now we have to really reevaluate everything that we're doing? What do we do? And that puts Warner Brothers, I think, in a very difficult position. And again, it sucks so much that, you know, they went through the turmoil that they went through, and it went through the unfortunate tragedy that it went through, and you have swapping out of directors and then wanting to retool the movie. And even a lot of the critics, what's interesting here is even a lot of the critics who are giving Justice League a negative review, even a lot of them are saying, but you know what? You kind of feel like it's heading in the right direction now. I know you've seen a ton of comments like that, right? Like a lot of critics who may not like the movie, but they're saying, but even though I didn't like it, it kind of feels like they're heading in the right direction now. And they're saying they have optimism. Okay, that's great. But if Justice League crashes and burns, as you know, financially, whatever, what do you do? And that is going to be the billion-dollar question over these next few months. Over these next few months, that is going to be the big question. And I think that one of those things is that this Matt Reeves Batman thing, I think it's going to be completely separated from the DCEU. I know Matt Reeves recently said, no, it'll be part of the DCEU. But if Justice League doesn't pick it up, and Justice League doesn't, its box office tracking and all this kind of stuff, if this stuff doesn't start to improve and really pick it up, I think you're going to see Warner Brothers shift gears and just go to Matt Reeves and say, okay, you know what? Forget the extended universe. Just make a Batman trilogy. Go. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about, well, Superman's in this universe and Wonder Woman's in this universe and Cyborg's in, you know what? Don't even worry about it. Just go make a good Batman trilogy. Go. Christopher Nolan did it without a cinematic universe. Why can't Matt Reeves? Matt Reeves can do it. So, I mean, look, there's a lot of possibilities, a lot of things that could happen, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of ideas and theories about how it could all go about. Jump down into the comments section and let me know what you guys think. All right, with all that out of the way now, guys, I'm going to go to the live questions from you guys who are watching live. If you're watching live right now, we've got nearly 2,000 of you in there. If you guys are watching live right now, here's how you get a question on. Simply tweet to me at John Campea. Just tweet to me at John Campea, and do me a favor, guys. I know that Twitter now allows for like 280 characters. Please keep your tweets short, because if they go too long, they're just going to go off my screen. I'm not going to be able to read them anyway. So please keep your tweets short. Now, you can start sending in those questions now. Before we get to those questions, I'm going to take my daily commercial break where we talk about the only thing that makes my shows possible, which is my Patreon supporters. Here, check this out. For those of you who have followed me for any period of time, you guys know that I made the decision recently to leave the corporate overlords. I no longer wanted to work for corporations. I wanted to be an independent content creator. And the only way I've been able to do that is by the support of my Patreon supporters. So what I would like to do is to ask you guys who watch my shows, who spend any amount of time with me every single month, to consider going over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. There you'll get all the information about what exactly does it mean to be a Patreon supporter of mine? What does being a Patreon supporter do for helping to make sure that shows like this one and all the other shows I do here on my channel can actually be produced? And on top of that, what benefits are there to being a Patreon supporter? And maybe if you guys can check that out, if you decide you want to be one of my Patreon supporters, that would be awesome. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just happy that you guys have decided to be here today and be a fellow movie fan and join us in the conversation. So go and check out the website, see if you want to become a Patreon supporter. And now let's get back. All right, guys, thanks again, especially to all of you guys who are already my Patreon supporters. Like I said, this whole thing, everything I do here is only made possible because of you guys. All right, now with that out of the way, let's go over to the Twitter board. I'm going to open up the Twitter feed here, and we are going to go to the first question. And the first question comes to us from, let's pull it up here, Bob Man, I was going to say Booby Man. Maybe it is Booby Man. Bob Man 11112 writes, John, have you watched Peaky Blinders? It's a gangster show with all the badass soundtrack, and Tom Hardy is so good in it. Yeah, I got to be honest, it didn't work for me. And it's crazy because a lot of my friends I share a lot of my entertainment tastes with, love that show. And like, they like almost everything I like. And they're like, check out Peaky Blinders. And I checked it out. I'm like, I can see why you'd like this, but it's just not clicking for me. So yeah, Tom Hardy's in it, and it's cool to see Tom Hardy in there. Like I said, it just didn't, the story of it, the pacing of it, it just didn't fire on all cylinders. I admit, I kind of ditched on it. I think after 3 episodes, I ditched on it. So not working for me, but like I said, I know a lot of people who really, really love that show. So you are not alone. All right, let's see. This one comes to us from Eben Law, who writes, John, thoughts on Whedon bashing his own movie and deleted Alfred scene with a mystery man? Well, if you're talking about bashing his own movie, I don't know what you're talking about. If you're talking about how, I hope this isn't what you're talking about, but there was this one tweet that somebody else put out saying that, hey, Steppenwolf was a terrible villain, something like that. And Joss Whedon gave a thumbs up to the comment. And I had people saying, Joss Whedon's bashing his own movie. And I tried to say to some people, I had this online conversation, it's like, or Joss Whedon is just an open-minded enough filmmaker that he encourages people to have a point of view about even his movies and expressing a point of view about it. Maybe he's just that secure that hey, you sent me a comment of your thought about my movie, and I'm not just going to give the positive ones a thumb up. You sent me a thought on your movie, I'll give it a thumb. Maybe that's it. Maybe not. Maybe I'm romanticizing it a little bit, but it seems to me like, I think people, I swear, like people give so much importance to tweets. It's really crazy. Not even just tweets now. It's not even something Joss Whedon tweeted. It's something Joss Whedon gave a like to. Just gave a like. And people started losing their minds. So I don't think, now as far as the deleted Alfred scene with the mystery man, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what it is you're talking about, so I can't comment on that. Maybe I'll learn more about it a little bit later. Let's see, this one comes to us from I am Zahir Uden, who writes, Johnny Depp's future, bright or not? Well, look, he's in this very big franchise right now with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. He's playing Grindelwald. He's in Murder on the Orient Express, which is a big, huge movie. I don't see, I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean, say what you want about it, it's still making the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So, look, Johnny Depp is doing just fine. I'd like to see him just go back and do more pure drama. I mean, that's what I would like to see him do, but look, there's no arguing. Just look, he's doing pretty good, so I think he's fine. I'm not going to say bright, but I'm not going to say it's not bright either. I think he's doing fine. Okay, let's try this one. This one comes to us from Timothy803, who writes, John, don't you think Jake Gyllenhaal is better fit to play Joker rather than the Batman? He's great at playing unhinged characters. No. Would he be a great Joker? Absolutely, sure, because he's a great actor. Here's what we do as film fans sometimes. We see a guy play one type of role, And then that's all we can possibly imagine him doing after that. That's it. I mean, that's it. Now, he was that kind of twisted, kind of weird psycho guy Nightcrawler, that he can be this. No, I've also seen him be in things where he's like a badass. It's like, no, this guy would be a great Batman. Remember, he was almost cast as Batman before. So, do I think he's better suited to play Joker? No, honestly, I think he's better suited to play Batman. Would he be a great Joker? Absolutely he would be, because he's a great actor. So I think he'd be a fabulous Joker, but I would definitely be, if I had a choice and I could either make Jake Gyllenhaal my Joker or I could make him my Batman, I'm making him my Batman. That's just me. That's just me. May not be you, and that's totally cool. Really, this is one of those great situations where there's no wrong answer. Jake Gyllenhaal's Batman or the Joker? The answer is correct. Either one totally works, so everybody wins. Let's see. This one comes to us from the Maximus King, who writes, views on this season of Gotham. I've been enjoying this season of Gotham. The funny thing is, where I find this season of Gotham slows down for me the most is when they've got Bruce in it. Honestly. And I've liked Bruce in previous seasons, and I like the kid who plays Bruce. It's just, I don't like this thing of, look guys, he's gonna be Batman. I mean, that just feels like they're hitting the audience over the head, and it gets away from what I thought the spirit of this show was supposed to be, which is a show about Gotham and a show about Jim Gordon and him dealing with Gotham. And it just feels like a little bit too much like they're saying, oh guys, we got to keep alluding to Batman. We got to keep alluding to Batman, got to keep alluding to Batman. And that's when I feel like it comes off the rails a little bit for me. But overall, I have enjoyed this season. I really have. Let's see here. Next one comes to us from Thinker Foreign, who writes, John, the DCEU is built on a poor foundation and the majority of people are not raving about it except for Wonder Woman. Well, I mean, look, you get a good amount of people like myself who love Man of Steel. You get, certainly Batman vs. Superman has fans, but you're right. The overwhelming majority of people aren't raving about those films. That's fine. Whatever. I don't think the problem is the foundation. The problem is the direction and the momentum. And I kind of feel like, here's the thing. Everything that the critics are saying, that even the ones who didn't like the movie about Justice League, the good stuff they're saying, like, but now it feels like it's heading in the right direction. I believe that all has to do with the change of direction they did when they brought in Joss Whedon after Zack Snyder had to step away. That's the stuff that most people are really enjoying the most about. I know that's the stuff that Anne liked the most. The stuff that Anne liked the most when we sat down and watched the movies was all the stuff that you could clearly tell was Joss Whedon's influence. And how can you tell, like somebody was asking me this, how can you tell when something in Justice League was a Zack Snyder thing, and how can you tell when something in Justice League was a Joss Whedon thing? The answer is really simple. Take a scene or a shot and say, is this scene or shot more like Batman versus Superman, or is it more like Avengers? And when you do it that way, you can clearly start to differentiate in your own eyes and in your own head which scenes were still more untouched Zack Snyder stuff. And there was some good stuff in there that you could clearly tell was Zack Snyder stuff. And then you could also clearly tell which stuff was Joss Whedon stuff. And there's some really good stuff in there that you can clearly tell was Joss Whedon stuff. So that becomes a little bit more clear and apparent. If anything, I think Warner Brothers is kicking themselves that they didn't do the full change in direction right at the beginning of production on Justice League. And look, I have hung out with Zack Snyder at parties and interviewed him on several occasions. He's a super nice guy. He's awesome. I am a fan 300. He's a terrific visual storyteller. I am a Zack Snyder fan. But I said from the beginning, like after Batman versus Superman, realizing, okay, I like Batman versus Superman, but the overwhelming majority of the audience did not. The critics did not. It didn't live up to its box office potential. You need to move on from Zack Snyder and let Zack Snyder go make some other awesome movies. You know? And I think there was a thought about replacing him. I think if there's anything Warner Brothers really regrets, it might be two things. Number one, that they didn't push the film into 2018. Number two, that they didn't just go with a new director off the bat. Whether it was Joss Whedon or not, it could have been somebody else. But I think probably today they'll kick themselves that they didn't completely go in that new direction right off the bat and right away. And that's probably the thing that they're kicking themselves over. Just my thought. Let's see. This next one comes to us from Matt Light 19, who writes, John, could we hear about Whedon being off Batgirl soon with everything going on with Justice League? No, because here's the thing. Like I've just mentioned, even the critics who are not liking Justice League seem to be saying, But it seems to be going in the right direction now. And all that has to do with the Joss Whedon stuff. That stuff all has to do with the Joss Whedon stuff. And Warner Brothers knows, hey, look, we threw Joss Whedon into a practically no-win situation. 6 months to go, reshooting all this stuff, having to do all this other crap on a movie you didn't even start. Go. So I think Warner Brothers knew right away. So I don't think that'll affect Batgirl. But I don't think he's going to direct Batgirl, not because of Justice League, but because I think they're going to want him to do something else. I got a feeling that after this whole Justice League thing is said and done, with it not performing up to its potential at the box office and its critic rating, I got a feeling Batgirl is going to be one of the first movies that we suddenly stop hearing about. I have a feeling Batgirl is going to be one of those movies that suddenly they're not talking about anymore. And then 6 months from now, people are going to be writing in on the John Campea Show, hey, John, whatever happened to that Batgirl movie? And I'll go, good question. They just kind of disappeared. I have a feeling that's going to happen to Batgirl. I do, which is neither a good nor a bad thing. I just think that's probably going to be one of the repercussions. Okay, I got time for a couple more here. Let's see. Let's go with this one. This one comes to us from TermNate22, who writes, John, do you think that there's way too many animated sequels coming out in the near future? No. Look, a sequel is just another story. There's nothing wrong with sequels. Like, go watch Empire Strikes Back and tell me there's something wrong with sequels. Sequels are just like any other movie. You know, lots of original movies come out that are bad. Lots of sequels come out that are bad. Some original movies come out that are great. Some sequels come out that are great. I really don't care that there are animated sequels coming out or not. All I care about is, are a good movie. How to Train Your Dragon 2 is magnificent. Toy Story 2 and 3, magnificent. I liked Monsters U. The Incredibles 2 is coming out, which we're all excited about. I've been dying for a Wreck-It Ralph. So, no, I'm totally good. I'm actually totally good, because there's a lot of original animated films coming out too. So it's not like it's just sequels coming out. There's lots of originals as well. By the way, Coco's opening soon. Make sure you go see Coco, because it's probably the best movie of the year. Best animated film of the year, I should say. All right, let's see. This next one comes to us from Clay19, who writes, John, why is it wrong for Rotten Tomatoes to use their tomato meter to promote their show again? It's their business, so I can see why they do it. I explained that ad nauseum. I explained why it was dirty and underhanded and just bush league of them to do that. I went I talked about that for like 15 minutes. Look, you don't get to position yourself and say, and try to become this pillar in the film fan community, one of the most reliant things, and then leverage that. Not to mention, it also smelled very bad. Now, whether there was anything to this or not, it smells bad, because it looks like, just like Warner Brothers was hiding the reviews, and they kept a very late review embargo date for Justice League. Warner Brothers is one of the owners of Rotten Tomatoes. So for them to then, not only are they holding off on the review embargo, we don't even want to let the general audience see the Rotten Tomato meter until the last possible second. That just smells bad. That just looks bad. Now, some people would say to me, John, Rotten Tomatoes or Warner Brothers doesn't have an ownership stake in Rotten Tomatoes anymore. They sold it a while ago. No. What happened is, Warner Brothers, I think it was about a year ago, they sold their stake in Rotten Tomatoes to Fandango, and then in turn became a shareholder and one of the owners of Fandango. So Warner Brothers is part owner of Fandango, which is the owner of Rotten Tomatoes. Ergo, Warner Brothers is one of the owners of Rotten Tomatoes. So that just smelled bad. That just had the stink of underhandedness going along with it. And the fact that they then started to leverage that. So you know what that does to me as a fan? It goes, okay, then you know what? I'm not going to use Rotten Tomatoes anymore. Sorry. No, if you're going to do that, if you're not going to make Rotten Tomatoes, which is supposed to be this completely unbiased, and by the way, that's the thing I always love to tell these DC fanboys who go, Rotten Tomatoes has an anti-DC bias. You do realize Warner Brothers is one of the owners of Rotten Tomatoes, right? Like, you know that? Are you saying Warner Brothers has an anti-DC bias? Is that what you're saying? Anyway, when you set yourself up, you're supposed to be this complete, unbiased, all we do is report the numbers. That's all we do. We just report the numbers, and we report them fairly and impartially and immediately. Like, reviews come out, we present the numbers. And now you're going to start playing games with trying to promote this, I'm sorry, terrible show on Facebook. And hey, you know, that's just my opinion. Maybe there's some of you guys out there who like it. That's awesome. That's just like movies, right? Online shows are just like movies. They're not for everybody. It's all subjective. Maybe they're saw it, seen it, did it, wank it, smoke it, whatever. Whatever the name of their show is. Maybe you enjoyed it and it worked for you. That's great. I thought it was a bad show, but whatever. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who think my show's a bad show, and they're totally entitled to that opinion. That's the great thing about subjectivity. So now you want to switch gears, and the first big film you pull this with just happens to be your big film that you're also holding a review embargo till the last possible minute, and now you're not even going to put out the reviews. And then, here's the other thing that was really smelled like rotten fish, is they said, okay, we're going to reveal the Rotten Tomatoes score on our Wank It, Smell It, Snort It, Sniff It show, whatever it's called. We're going to reveal the score there. Okay, fine. They still didn't put it online. Like, the next day came, and it still wasn't online. It's like, hey, you didn't watch Wank It, Sniff It, Snort It, Smell It. Come on over and watch it there. It's like, but you know, you said you were revealing it last night. Now put it on your site. Nope, they kept holding it, and they held it as long as they could. And again, I am not saying that was a coordinated effort from Warner Brothers' part. But what I am saying is you have to be cognizant enough to realize, what does this appear like? What does it look like? This has the appearance of impropriety. You're part owner in this thing and you're holding off the reviews, something you've never done for a major film before. You're doing it now. So anyway, I was just the whole thing was a bad move. And if they continue to do this, this isn't me going, oh, boycott anything I don't like. I'm just saying, for me personally, if they do continue this, you are not going to hear me reference Rotten Tomatoes anymore. I'm not going to call for you to know. I'm not calling for a boycott, nothing stupid like that. I'm just saying, me personally, if they keep treating the film fan community like that and just leveraging it as their own tool of manipulation, then why would I use Rotten Tomatoes? I'm not. I'm going to start using Metacritic. I like the Rotten Tomatoes system much better. The purity of a thumbs up or a thumbs down review, I like that much, much better. I think it's a much purer review system. But if you're not going to taint that with all this underhandedness, then what am I as a film fan left to do? I'm going to go over and start using Metacritic and start using Metacritic in all of my discussions, stuff like that. And I'm just not going to talk about Rotten Tomatoes anymore. So, and maybe I'll be the only one and everybody else still will, and it won't affect Rotten Tomatoes at all. That's perfectly fine. But I just don't want to use them anymore if they're going to keep this up. But that's just my opinion, just my thought. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe you agree with me. Maybe you totally disagree with me. Have I mentioned I have not slept? Have I mentioned that? Anyway. Okay, guys, that will do it for me on this episode of the John Campea Show. I can't even go to bed yet because I got 6 more episodes of Punisher I have to get through. And then maybe I'll go to sleep after lunch sometime. Won't that be wonderful? Thank you guys so much for joining me and being here today. Honestly, you guys are the ones who make it fun to be a film fan and for me to do this. And having you guys join me every day in this discussion is just amazing, and I'm humbled and honored, and it's great being film fans with you guys when we agree, when we disagree, when we get to debate about different things, whether it's about Star Wars and Star Trek or drama versus comedy or musicals versus this or Marvel versus DC. It's always fun because even though there are some jackass idiots out there, most of you guys are just level-headed, great movie fans that love to debate, and that's the awesome thing about being a film fan. All right, guys, that will wrap it up for me. Thanks so much for joining me. My name is John Campea. I'll be back again sometime later today with the Punisher review. I'll probably be like, but anyway, thanks a lot for joining me, guys. My name is John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye. No sleep.